Most people harbor a secret, painful thought they rarely voice. How is it that someone not even that smart is rolling in money? While I'm still struggling? You've likely witnessed it firsthand. Someone who can barely string together a coherent conversation is driving the car you've always dreamed of. They're jet-setting, buying things, investing, while you're stuck wondering where you took a wrong turn. It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Because deep down, you know you're not lazy. You've put in the hard work. You've studied diligently. You've strived to do things the right way. Yet somehow, people who seem less intelligent than you are the ones getting rich. Here's a harsh truth that Machiavelli himself might whisper if he were alive today. Intelligence isn't what governs the world, strategy does. The world isn't a level playing field, it's rigged. And those individuals you perceive as less capable? They've simply learned to navigate the game differently. They don't strive for perfection, they aim for power. That's the fundamental distinction. Let's be real. School, society, and even your own parents have instilled in you the belief that intelligence and hard work are guarantees of success. However, the system isn't designed to reward sheer intellect. It rewards manipulation, leverage, and impeccable timing. Machiavelli wrote centuries ago that power resides with those who understand human nature, not those who pursue morality or fairness. And that observation holds just as true today. So, here's the secret that most people never grasp. It's not about the depth of your knowledge, but rather how effectively you utilize what you know. The typical intelligent person gets bogged down in information overload and ends up paralyzed by inaction. They overanalyze every single move. They wait for the perfect moment. They crave external validation. Meanwhile, the so-called dumb ones move swiftly, bend the rules, take calculated risks, and strategically position themselves for victory. They aren't necessarily smarter, they're simply colder, more strategic, and more willing to endure small losses in pursuit of significant gains. Think of it this way: the intelligent individual studies the chessboard meticulously. The Machiavellian individual plays the game with ruthless efficiency. The intelligent individual argues about what's fair and just. The Machiavellian individual asks, what works most effectively? One seeks logical solutions, while the other seeks to maximize leverage. One desires to be right, while the other aspires to rule. You've probably encountered someone like that. A person who seems undeserving of their success. Perhaps they speak nonsense half the time, yet everyone hangs on their every word. Why? Because they understand people, not just abstract problems. They recognize that emotions are far more potent motivators than logic. They understand that power is ultimately a matter of perception. That's the first hidden rule. Wealth doesn't follow intelligence, it follows influence. Let me share a story to illustrate this point. There's a guy named Mark. He has an average IQ and never finished college. But he understood one crucial thing: attention equals money. While his more intelligent friends dismissed social media as a frivolous waste of time, he learned how to tap into people's emotions. He didn't sell knowledge, he sold feelings, confidence, excitement, a sense of belonging. And while the intelligent ones debated the intricacies of algorithms, he was busy monetizing them. Now, he earns more in a single week than they do in an entire year. Why did he succeed? Because he mastered the emotional game. People don't buy facts, they buy into beliefs. They don't follow the truth, they follow energy. And Mark, whether consciously or not, applied Machiavelli's oldest principle. People are moved more by appearances than by reality. Here's another compelling example. Sarah, an average employee at her company, wasn't the most brilliant. She didn't possess the most impressive degree. And she didn't know every single detail of her job. However, she mastered something her colleagues didn't: visibility. She made sure her boss was aware of her successes. She spoke with confidence, even when she wasn't entirely sure of herself. She took credit for outcomes that others overlooked. Within 2 years, she was promoted over people who technically possessed more knowledge than she did. Do you see the pattern emerging? The world doesn't reward those who deserve it. It rewards those who position themselves to appear deserving. Intelligence is potential energy, while Machiavellian strategy is kinetic energy. One remains dormant, while the other strikes with force. Now, ask yourself this: when was the last time you made a bold move without overthinking it to death? When was the last time you said, "I'll figure it out later"? and simply took action? That's the muscle that most intelligent people never develop. They allow their intelligence to become a trap. They focus too much on the how and not enough on the why. And that's why they remain financially stuck. Machiavelli would argue that the greatest fools are those who mistake goodness for power. You've been told that humility, honesty, and patience will somehow lead you to success. But here's the unvarnished truth. Those are luxuries enjoyed by the powerful, not tools employed by the powerless. You can only afford to be nice once you've already secured your position on the throne. Until then, you must play the game to win. And the game is deceptively simple. Observe people, not principles. Learn about behavior, not just skills. If you can accurately predict what people will do next, you can profit from it, whether in business, relationships, or life in general. That's why people who seem less intelligent often come out on top. They understand people better than you do. Let me offer a psychological insight here. Intelligence makes you focus on complexity, while strategy makes you focus on control. The intelligent person perceives the world as an intricate and complicated place. The Machiavellian person simplifies it into a series of moves, reactions, and power shifts. They don't try to understand everything, they only learn what's necessary to achieve victory. It's similar to a poker game. The smartest player studies probabilities, odds, and game theory. The Machiavellian player studies faces, emotions, and fear. Guess who usually wins? The one who reads people, not numbers. That's wealth in the real world. Money flows to whoever can read the room faster and more accurately than everyone else. Here's a forbidden truth. Being too intelligent can make you predictable. The wealthy don't need to outsmart you, they just need to outmaneuver you. You're busy trying to prove your intelligence, while they're busy turning your intelligence into their profit. You write reports, they sell the reports. You design products, they market them. You build things, they brand them. And here's the darkest part of all. Some of them are fully aware of what they're doing. They know you crave validation. They know you'll trade control for comfort. They allow you to feel intellectually superior while they quietly take what they want. It's not a matter of luck, it's a matter of calculated manipulation. Cold, quiet, and strategic. So, the next time you look at someone wealthier than you and think, I'm smarter than them, stop. You're measuring success in the wrong arena. The world isn't a classroom, it's a battlefield. The ones who emerge victorious don't necessarily need to know all the rules. They just need to bend them more effectively than you can. But let me pose a question to you. What if you stopped being an overthinker and started becoming an observer? What if you learned to read the game, not just play fair? What if you channeled your intelligence strategically instead of emotionally? That's when everything changes. Because here's the truth that Machiavelli wanted you to understand. Intelligence without cunning is a weakness. And the moment you start thinking like the elite, you stop waiting for fairness and start creating your own advantages. You don't need to be ruthless, you just need to stop being naive. Stop assuming that hard work will automatically be recognized. Stop believing that talent speaks for itself. The world doesn't listen, it watches. Every wealthy person you believe is unintelligent has mastered one thing better than you: presentation. They evoke feelings in people. That's power disguised as simplicity. So, the next time you see someone you consider less intelligent winning, don't roll your eyes in disdain. Study them, observe how they move, how they speak, and how they elicit reactions from others. Because that's the real education. The Machiavellian kind. When you grasp that, you'll stop chasing approval and start chasing influence. And that's when the game truly begins. Because the next move isn't about the extent of your knowledge. It's about the amount of power you can generate from what you know. And most people will never figure that out. Now that you understand that intelligence isn't the real currency, but rather leverage is, it's time to unveil the second and third core principles that the wealthy employ. Often without even realizing it. These are the subtle mechanisms that transform ordinary individuals into strategic winners. You'll see precisely why intelligent people remain stuck while others rise rapidly. Here's the first harsh principle: speed trumps perfection. The people you dismiss as dumb don't wait for the perfect plan to materialize. They simply take action. They launch their ideas in a messy, imperfect state. They start selling before they feel entirely ready. They make mistakes publicly. And with each failure, They gather invaluable data that the intelligent ones never acquire, real-world feedback. Machiavelli would say, "He who hesitates is already conquered." That's the insidious trap of intelligence, hesitation. You convince yourself that you're being careful and prudent. But in reality, you're simply being slow. You believe you're engaged in thorough analysis. But you're actually avoiding risk. And while you're waiting, someone bolder seizes your idea, your market, and your moment. Let's bring this concept to life with a concrete example. There was a man named Adrian, a brilliant coder who graduated at the top of his class. He created a flawless product with impeccable design, zero bugs, and endless features, but he insisted on making it absolutely perfect before launching it to the public. Meanwhile, another guy named Leo copied half of Adrian's idea, created a simple, stripped-down version, and launched it early. Guess who became a millionaire? Not the genius, but the mover and shaker. Adrian was intelligent, but Leo was Machiavellian. He understood that the world doesn't reward perfection, it rewards presence. Because once you're actively participating in the market, you have the opportunity to improve and refine your product. But if you're still stuck in the planning phase, you simply don't exist. That's the second core principle. Action builds credibility. People respect what they can see. The intelligent individual hides behind theory, while the strategic individual cultivates visibility. Every post, every product, every pitch is a small signal that says, "I'm in motion," and motion creates momentum, which in turn generates power. Think about it. How often have you witnessed someone receiving attention and praise for something you could have done even better, but didn't? That sting you feel is the cost of hesitation. That's how the world taxes intelligence. The Machiavellian mind doesn't chase flawless perfection, it chases advantage. Every move, even a small one, generates leverage. Every public action builds credibility. Even mistakes can be transformed into powerful weapons when used correctly. Because here's a secret, when you move quickly, people assume you know exactly what you're doing. They mistakenly equate confidence with competence. That's how people who seem less intelligent appear to be smart. They act decisively before anyone has a chance to doubt them. Now, let's move on to the third core principle. Power is concealed within perception. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see, but few can feel." In other words, people believe what they see, not necessarily what's true. The so-called dumb rich understand this concept perfectly. They invest more in their appearance than in their actual intelligence. They don't need to be the smartest people in the room, they just need to look like they're winning. Once people believe that, money, opportunities, and influence will inevitably gravitate towards them. Consider social media influencers. Many of them aren't genuine experts in their fields. However, they've mastered the art of visibility. They understand that power begins with perception. Do you think they're just lucky? No, they're strategic. They recognize that human beings are drawn to confidence, not necessarily competence. Let me share a brief but true story. There was a young man named Tariq who wanted to launch a business teaching sales. But he had never actually sold anything himself. Instead of spending years trying to earn credibility the traditional way, he manufactured it. He filmed short videos breaking down the psychology behind buying decisions, spoke with the air of an expert, and dressed the part. Within 3 months, he had landed paying clients. Did he lie? Not exactly. He simply understood that perception is the first sale. And that's what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Appearances are stronger than reality." Once you control what people see, you control what they believe. Once you control belief, you control action. And that's power, pure, clean, and quiet. Now, here's the twist that intelligent people often find difficult to accept. They underestimate the power of simplicity. They convince themselves that there's no way it can be that easy. But that very disbelief is what keeps them trapped in their current situation. Because power often lurks behind seemingly simple concepts. Do you want proof? Look at politics. The most intelligent people in the country rarely hold positions of power. The ones who do understand the power of narratives, emotions, and visibility. They don't engage in complex debates, they direct the conversation. They don't solve problems, they shape perceptions. That's why the world runs on stories, not logic. The wealthy understand this implicitly. They sell identity, not information. You might think they're foolish for repeating the same slogans or showing off their possessions online. but they're actually programming attention. You see, the Machiavellian individual doesn't need to outsmart the crowd, they just need to direct it. And you can't direct something you don't understand. Let's break it down further. The intelligent individual asks, what's right? The Machiavellian individual asks, what works? The intelligent individual argues based on facts, while the Machiavellian individual crafts compelling beliefs. And beliefs drive markets. You don't have to like this truth, but you can't afford to ignore it. The world rewards clarity, not complexity. Simplicity attracts attention, and attention generates wealth. Now, let's connect these principles. Speed builds momentum, action builds credibility, perception builds power. When you combine them, you have a blueprint for how people who seem less intelligent than you manage to get rich. They act quickly, they make themselves visible, and they control the narrative that people see. That's it, but don't mistake this for mere luck. It's a calculated strategy, a form of controlled chaos. They may not engage in elaborate long-term planning, but they adapt instantly to changing circumstances. Every move is a form of feedback, and every mistake is a source of valuable data. Meanwhile, intelligent people wait for all the data to come in before taking action. By the time they finally make a decision, the battlefield has already shifted. Machiavelli would find that amusing, because the goal isn't to fully understand the system, it's to effectively use it. Think about this. Who do you believe is more likely to be remembered, the silent genius or the loud strategist? The one who invented something or the one who successfully marketed it? History doesn't reward creators, it rewards conquerors. So, here's your wake-up call. If you want to stop watching others win, stop trying to be right all the time and start trying to be effective. Stop debating endlessly. Start strategically positioning yourself. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start taking action. Because the brutal truth is that money doesn't care about intelligence, it cares about momentum. And every second you spend analyzing instead of acting, someone else is already monetizing the idea you're still contemplating. That's how the game is played. And most people will never catch on. Pause. But for those who do, the question becomes, once you start moving, how do you maintain control? How do you ensure that you don't lose everything you've gained? That's where the next set of Machiavellian principles comes into play. The principles that the elite live by but never explicitly teach. They revolve around patience, leverage, and substitution, the quiet weapons of those who rise slowly, strategically, and without mercy. Good, now that you understand how speed, action, and perception generate power, it's time to learn how the smart rich stay on top once they get there. Because here's another cruel truth. Getting rich quickly is relatively easy compared to staying rich. The real game isn't about making money, it's about maintaining control. This is where most people, even the bold ones, ultimately fall apart. They mistake activity for progress. They gain attention, but not leverage. They accumulate money, but not power. They win a few battles, but ultimately lose the war. And that's because they never master the next three Machiavellian principles: patience, leverage, and substitution. Let's start with the one that seems the most boring, but is actually the deadliest weapon: patience. The seemingly dumb rich often move quickly initially, but the truly powerful move strategically slow. They possess an understanding of timing that surpasses everyone else. You see, most people's downfall isn't failure itself, it's impatience. They experience one success and mistakenly believe they're invincible. They make money and immediately flaunt it. They invest in every new trend, desperately trying to appear bigger and more successful than they actually are. That's when the system reclaims everything they've gained. Machiavelli would describe patience as the disguise of predators. Because the most dangerous player doesn't rush into action, they wait until others become careless and overconfident. They conceal their intentions behind a veil of silence. They allow their opponents to expose their weaknesses, then strike with precision when the reward is guaranteed. Think about how lions hunt. They don't chase after every potential target. They stalk their prey. They wait patiently. They meticulously study patterns. Then, when the moment is perfect, they explode with calculated force. That's what patience looks like in business and in life: calm on the surface, but with intense calculation simmering beneath. You can observe this pattern among investors as well. The impulsive ones jump on every trending opportunity. while the Machiavellian ones wait for moments of widespread panic. When everyone else is selling, they're buying. When everyone else is driven by greed, they disappear from the scene. They exploit the emotions of the crowd to their advantage. That's not a matter of luck, it's a matter of strategic timing. Now, let's move on to the second principle: leverage. Leverage is what transforms effort into an empire. It's the reason why some people work less and earn more. The seemingly dumb rich may start with speed and rapid action, but the truly wise rich scale their operations through the strategic use of leverage. Because once you've gained momentum, simply working harder won't necessarily double your results. However, finding effective leverage will. Machiavelli's concept of power wasn't about doing everything yourself. It was about controlling those who are capable of doing it for you. Leverage means amplifying your influence without proportionally increasing your effort. It's how kings were able to rule vast kingdoms without ever having to lift a sword. In modern times, leverage takes many different forms. Financial leverage, using capital to generate more capital. People leverage, building teams or networks that act on your behalf. Media leverage, cultivating influence that amplifies your message. Skill leverage, mastering a unique and highly sought-after ability that others depend on. Here's a story to illustrate this point. There was a man named Felix who started flipping sneakers in high school. He worked incredibly hard, handling every aspect of the business manually. But he soon realized that he couldn't scale his operations that way. So, he hired 2 younger students to handle sales, while he focused on sourcing deals. Then, he built a simple website, automated the order process, and used social media to attract buyers. Within 2 years, the same amount of effort was generating 10 times more money. That's leverage, replacing brute force with strategic thinking. Here's the Machiavellian interpretation. Never engage in a direct battle where strength is required when you can achieve victory through strategic structuring. The wealthy don't simply work, they design systems that work for them. That's why most intelligent people remain relatively poor. They continue to rely on sheer effort instead of creating a scalable architecture. Now, let's examine the third principle: substitution. This one is subtle, but it's what distinguishes those who rise steadily from those who burn out quickly. Substitution involves replacing direct confrontation with strategic redirection. When someone obstructs your path, you don't engage in a head-on collision. You replace the battlefield entirely. Most people waste their energy attempting to convince, compete, or complain. The Machiavellian individual doesn't do that. They substitute. If one door closes, they build another door. If a person refuses to cooperate, they replace them with someone who will. If a system rejects them, they create their own system. That's how innovators rise, not by seeking permission, but by changing the rules of the game. Look at history. When traditional banks wouldn't provide loans to tech founders, those founders created cryptocurrencies. When established studios ignored independent creators, YouTube emerged and replaced Hollywood. When the elite rejected outsiders, those outsiders built new elite circles online. That's substitution, the highest form of rebellion. And it's also the quietest. Because instead of fighting for power, you absorb it, you shift the energy, you redirect the game until the old rules no longer apply to you. Now, let's combine these 3 principles: patience, leverage, and substitution. Patience provides you with time to observe and study. Leverage allows you to expand your reach without becoming exhausted. Substitution provides you with freedom from the limitations of the old system. Together, they make you virtually unstoppable. Here's a simple example of how they work in sequence. You start small, patience. You observe the market carefully, patience. You learn how people behave, patience. Then, you identify a way to amplify your results, leverage. Finally, when you encounter an insurmountable obstacle, you don't complain or give up. You create an alternative path, substitution. Most intelligent people fail because they only operate at one level. They're patient, but never take decisive action. They work hard, but never build leverage. They encounter a roadblock and give up instead of creating their own system. That's why they ultimately lose to people who seemingly shouldn't be wealthier than they are. And here's something that most people won't tell you. The elite often use these principles against the general public. They understand that the average person desires instant gratification, so they sell shortcuts. They know people crave freedom, so they sell flexibility. They understand human impatience and build multi-billion-dollar systems that exploit it. They don't need to be smarter, they just need to understand your impulses better than you do. Machiavelli would describe that as the ultimate form of power, control without confrontation. The ability to influence behavior without resorting to force. The power to make people choose what you've already decided for them. That's what true wealth looks like. It's not just about accumulating money, it's about achieving freedom from being controlled. It's the ability to walk away, to take action when you choose, to move without seeking permission. And once you grasp that, your entire worldview shifts. You stop thinking like an employee, even if you still hold a job. You stop thinking like a follower, even when you're learning, because now you're able to see the invisible structure that underlies success, the architecture of control. Let me share a brief micro-story that encapsulates all three principles. There was a young man working in a coffee shop. Every day, he overheard business people discussing deals while he prepared their drinks. Instead of complaining, he observed and learned patience. Then, he began offering to deliver coffee to nearby offices, saving them valuable time, leverage, one trip, multiple orders. Finally, when his boss refused to allow him to expand the delivery service, he started his own mobile coffee cart outside those same offices, substitution. Within a year, he was earning more than the coffee shop owner. He wasn't the most intelligent person, and he didn't have access to significant capital, but he had strategy. That's the Machiavellian edge. The ability to transition from powerlessness to influence without drawing undue attention to yourself. Now, think about your own life. How many times have you had a brilliant idea but killed it with impatience? How many times have you worked harder when you could have worked smarter? How many times have you remained loyal to a system that stopped serving you instead of creating your own? That's where wealth hides, in the subtle shift from reaction to creation. Because the ultimate truth is this: people who seem less intelligent than you don't overthink the game, they simply play it differently. They're not burdened by moral hesitation or analysis paralysis. They use instinct, timing, and human psychology as their primary tools. And once you start combining your intelligence with that mindset, the mindset of patience, leverage, and substitution, you become virtually untouchable. You stop being an observer and become an architect. But the story doesn't end here. Because even after people master these strategies, they often lose everything by misunderstanding one crucial thing: how to wield their newfound power without being consumed by it. That's where the next chapter begins, the transformation arc. The elite mindset that transforms raw strategy into lasting dominance. Here's where the game truly shifts. You've learned the fundamental principles. You've seen how patience, leverage, and substitution can transform seemingly powerless thinkers into quiet conquerors. But strategy alone isn't enough to make you unstoppable. Discipline is. The wealthy individuals you perceive as dumb didn't just get lucky, they built systems around their emotions. They transformed control into a deeply ingrained habit. And that's where most intelligent people stumble. They allow emotions to cloud their judgment. They know the right move, but can't bring themselves to execute it. They prioritize comfort over control. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He famously said, "It is better to be feared than loved." If you cannot be both. Most people crave love, validation, attention, and approval. But the powerful choose to cultivate fear, not in others, but in themselves. They fear stagnation. They fear mediocrity. That fear fuels their unwavering discipline. Let's begin with the seventh principle, emotional detachment. If you aspire to wield true power, you must learn to make decisions without needing to feel good about them. The elite don't wait for motivation to strike. They don't chase fleeting passions. They move with unwavering precision. They treat emotions like the weather, useful to acknowledge, but dangerous to follow blindly. A person who cannot control their own emotions can be easily controlled by anyone who knows how to trigger them. Think about it. Advertisers use emotions to entice you to buy things. Politicians use emotions to sway your vote. Manipulators use emotions to provoke a reaction. If you can't detach yourself from your emotional responses, you'll always be a puppet in someone else's play. Here's a brief story to illustrate this point. There was a trader named Nolan. He was a brilliant analyst who knew the markets inside and out. But every time he experienced a loss, He became emotionally charged, doubled down on his bets, sought revenge through impulsive trades, and ignored his own carefully considered logic. Eventually, he lost his entire account. Meanwhile, another trader, who possessed less formal education, simply followed a predetermined system. He never allowed emotions to influence his decisions. He generated smaller profits, but he remained in the game long enough to accumulate wealth. Guess who ultimately became rich? Emotion can make even the most intelligent people act foolishly. Conversely, detachment empowers even the most average individuals to act with strategic brilliance. Now, let's consider the eighth principle. Reputation management. Any strategically minded individual understands that reputation serves as a protective shield. Wealthy individuals don't prioritize defending their ego. They focus on safeguarding their public image. This is because perception, yet again, heavily influences opportunity. You might be thinking, I don't really care what other people think of me. However, that's the mindset of someone who lacks power. Those who wield power actively shape the opinions of others. Machiavelli famously said, "A prince must appear virtuous, even if he is not." Why is this? Because a favorable appearance fosters trust. Trust provides time, and time ultimately buys freedom. Here's the crucial point to remember. Building a solid reputation isn't about putting on a false front. It's about proactively managing and controlling the narrative surrounding you. When setbacks occur, take ownership of the story before someone else can define it for you. When things are going well, make sure to highlight and amplify those successes. Don't sit back and wait for others to define who you are. You need to define yourself. And you need to do it assertively. You see examples of this in the business world all the time. A CEO might make a series of questionable decisions, but if they effectively control the resulting messaging, they can weather the storm. A celebrity might find themselves embroiled in scandal, but if they get ahead of the story and spin it in their favor, they become a trending topic instead of a cautionary tale. This is reputation being strategically employed as a weapon. But there's an even deeper level to this concept. It's what I like to call strategic humility. It means projecting humility when it serves your interests, and projecting strength when it truly matters. Machiavelli referred to this as wearing the mask of virtue. It's the reason why the most potentially dangerous people often present themselves as the most harmless. That brings us to the ninth principle, which is controlled visibility. It's not necessary for every action you take to be on full display. Power actually grows and multiplies in silence. You reveal just enough to maintain relevance, but you never reveal so much that you become predictable. You showcase progress, but you keep the specific processes under wraps. The more insight people have into your methods, the easier it becomes for them to either copy your strategies or actively try to undermine you. The stereotype of the dumb rich individual might seem open and transparent, but they never reveal anything of real strategic value. Every smile has a strategy behind it. Every social media post, every casual conversation, every gesture is carefully filtered through a single, critical question. Does this action increase or reduce my overall power? They understand a timeless rule, which is that mystery only multiplies influence. You've likely observed this phenomenon yourself. When someone seemingly disappears for a while, only to resurface in a better, richer, sharper, and more composed version of themselves. Everyone wants to know the secret to their transformation. That curiosity is what gives them power. Visibility without an element of mystery is just noise. However, visibility combined with mystery creates magnetism. This is why truly elite players understand the strategic value of knowing when to disappear from the public eye. Silence isn't absence. It's a deliberate strategy. It forces people to fill in the blanks with their own imaginations, often leading them to overestimate your abilities and resources. Now we've reached the 10th and final principle, the transformation arc. Once you've mastered the concepts of emotional detachment, reputation management, and controlled visibility, you don't just make money anymore. You fundamentally become someone else entirely. You transition from being reactive to being deliberate, from merely being a part of the existing system to actively shaping and influencing it. This is the profound transformation that separates those who are only temporarily rich from those who build lasting, enduring wealth. Those who rapidly build their empires on emotional impulses will crumble under pressure. The Machiavellian endures because their foundation is built on a solid bedrock of control. Not on luck, not on validation from others, and not on fleeting trends. Here's a closer look at what that transformation looks like in practice. You stop seeking fairness and instead focus on acquiring power. You stop wasting your time explaining yourself to others and start strategically positioning yourself. You stop chasing after individual results and instead start building systems that are designed to guarantee those results. You stop competing with other individuals and start actively controlling entire categories. You evolve from being just another player to being the one who designs and controls the entire game board. That's why Machiavelli's lessons continue to hold relevance centuries later, because they speak to the fundamental aspects of human nature itself. People themselves don't really change. Only the tools and technologies they use do. The same manipulative tactics that once played out in royal courts now play out on social media platforms. The same power struggles that were once fought within kingdoms are now fought within corporate boardrooms. The game itself never truly ends. It just continually evolves and upgrades. Now, let's bring this back to you directly. If you've watched this video all the way to this point, you're already ahead of the vast majority of people. You've pulled back the curtain and seen what truly drives wealth creation. It's not simply luck or even raw intelligence. It's a strategy that's fundamentally built on self-control. The ultimate goal here isn't to become ruthless or Machiavellian. It's simply to become fully aware. Because once you've seen the game for what it truly is, you can't ever unsee it. You'll start to notice who is making decisions based on emotion and who is moving strategically. You'll start to see the quiet ones winning, right out in the open. You'll be able to detect manipulation tactics before they can be used against you. And once that awareness truly sharpens, you'll start to think about things in a fundamentally different way. When someone insults you, you don't react emotionally, you calculate your response. When someone tries to block your progress, you don't waste time arguing. You find a substitute path. When someone chooses to ignore you, you don't chase after them. You strategically reposition yourself. You stop living your life reacting to things, and you start living your life in a position of control. Now, just imagine that kind of transformation stretched out across years. You would become virtually untouchable. You wouldn't just be smart. You would become dangerously effective. That's the essence of the Machiavellian evolution. But there's one final piece to consider. The endgame, because every empire, regardless of how strong it may seem, will eventually fall when its leader forgets this one critical rule: power must continually evolve. The very game that made you rich and successful in the first place won't be the thing that keeps you rich and successful. You have to adapt faster than the people who are trying to copy your strategies. That's why the truly elite never stop learning. They observe the system like a hunter observes their prey. Quiet, focused, and emotionless. They don't celebrate their victories for too long. They don't get drunk on their own success. They disappear, rebuild, and return sharper and more refined than ever before. That's your next level. Now, take a moment to pause and really think. Who will you be after this video ends? The thinker, or the strategist? The one who waits for the world to be fair, or the one who actively shapes it to their own advantage? The answer to that question will decide everything. If you want to delve even deeper into these ideas, there's another video waiting for you. One that breaks down exactly how the wealthy manipulate attention itself in order to maintain control. It connects perfectly with everything you've learned here. Watch it next, because once you truly understand the power of attention, you'll understand the ultimate form of modern power. And remember, it's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the one who owns the room. That's the Machiavellian truth.